Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Abigail Knott. Welcome to Walk by Faith. Please like, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. And welcome. Please join me as I continue with Foreshadows of Christ, the Great Offerings. We've done leaven. We've done. We did flour and oil, which was supposed to be mixed together. We did leaven, which represents sin, so no leaven in the offering. And then we did honey, no honey in the offering, because honey represented the fleshliness of people's lives. And then we get to salt. And Leviticus 2 verse 13 says, "You are to season every grain offering of yours with salt. Do not omit from the grain offering the salt of the covenant of with your God, but offer salt with all your offerings." So the salt represented the covenant with God. The people had a covenant with God. A covenant is an agreement. It's like, I will look after you, but I need you to do X, Y, and Z. There were always conditions on what God said, on God's blessing. He said, you have to cleanse yourselves. You have to give living sacrifices. You have to sort all sorts of things out. And you have to do, this is how you are to treat people who are lepers. This is how you are to treat people who are turning their back on the laws of God. And you need to be obedient to me. And the obedience was more important than anything else. And that was actually key. And as we know, the Israelites did disobey God often. So when they got into trouble, it was actually God disciplining them as a loving father. Because if you do X, Y, and Z, if you're a good parent, you're going to say, if you do that, that is wrong. Here's why. But if you do that, this is what's going to happen. This is a consequence of your actions. And so God, like a loving father, gave consequences to their sin. And they had to suffer those consequences many, many, many times. So that's the salt of the covenant with your God. It's like almost like a seal. The salt seals the covenant with that sacrifice. And then there's frankincense. And it's frankincense, and it said because of jealousy in brackets. So frankincense was not used on the meal offering, but it was used on certain meal offerings. So in Numbers 5 verse 15, he is to bring his wife to the priest along with the offering for her to 2 quarts of barley flour, on which he has not poured olive oil or put frankincense, because it is a grain offering for jealousy, a grain offering for remembering, for calling guilt to mind. So therefore frankincense wasn't allowed to be used on that offering, except the meal that represented perfect life of Christ. That offering was allowed to have frankincense on, because frankincense was the odor of a life of trials, where you have gone through lots of trials and persecution, and you've been tested, and you've been refined. And so frankincense represents suffering. And if you remember in a previous video, I actually said, in a few previous videos, I said that in the Holy of Holies, they had 12 loaves of bread that did not have leaven in. And there were 12 for the tribes of Israel, for the 12 tribes of Israel. excuse me. And on those loaves, they used to put um, frankincense, and frankincense was very bitter, and the priests had to eat it. They had to eat all that bread, and it had a bitter taste because it actually was a foreshadow of Christ's suffering on the cross. That's what it actually represented, the suffering. And so here you say frankincense is the odor of a life of trials, where you've been tried and tested and refined. So so that's all I've got for today. Keep on living a Christ-filled life. I'll see you next time. Bye.